I'm sorry, sir, but we don't have a reservation under that name. I booked this room weeks ago. Check it again.
The night Daniel Carter walked into the most luxurious hotel in Chicago, he wasn't wearing a designer suit, carrying a briefcase, or surrounded by bodyguards. He wore an old gray hoodie. His 8-year-old daughter, Lily, held his hand. And the front desk manager looked at him as if he were someone who had no business being there. "Sir, I'm sorry," the manager said coldly. "We're completely booked." Daniel glanced at the enormous chandelier above them, then at the marble floor beneath his worn sneakers. "Booked?" he asked quietly. "Yes." Daniel looked toward the elevators. "My daughter and I have a reservation." The manager sighed. "I'm afraid your reservation doesn't exist." Lily looked up at her father. "Daddy, did we come to the wrong hotel?" Daniel swallowed hard. "No, sweetheart. We're exactly where we're supposed to be." What the manager didn't know was that Daniel hadn't merely booked a room. He owned the entire hotel. And before sunrise, every employee standing behind that front desk would discover exactly who the tired single father in the gray hoodie really was. But this wasn't a story about revenge. It was a story about a promise. A promise Daniel had made to the little girl holding his hand. And if you stay until the end, you'll understand why the most powerful thing he did that night wasn't firing anyone. It was giving someone a second chance. Before we begin, if you enjoy emotional stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary moments, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes the people we underestimate are the very people who have the power to change everything. Daniel Carter had learned a long time ago that money couldn't fix everything. There had been a time when he believed it could. He had been 34 when his wife, Emily, died unexpectedly after a sudden illness. One day she had been sitting at the kitchen table helping Lily with her homework. The next week Daniel was standing alone in a hospital hallway, holding his daughter's tiny pink jacket while a doctor explained that there was nothing more they could do. Daniel remembered every word. He remembered the smell of disinfectant. He remembered the rain against the hospital windows. He remembered Lily asking him, "Daddy, when is Mommy coming home?" And he remembered the promise he made. "Mommy will always be with us." After Emily died, Daniel changed. Not because he wanted to. Because he had to. He became both parents to Lily. He learned how to braid hair after watching online tutorials. He learned which cereal she liked and which one made her complain. He learned how to pack school lunches while answering business calls. He learned that 8-year-old girls sometimes woke up from nightmares at 2 in the morning and didn't need explanations. They just needed someone to hold them. Daniel was that someone. At the same time, his small property company was growing. He had started it years earlier with one rundown apartment building. Then came 2 buildings. Then 5. Then hotels. His biggest success was the Carter Grand, a luxury hotel in downtown Chicago. It had 280 rooms, a rooftop restaurant, a grand ballroom, a spa, and a lobby so beautiful that magazines often photographed it for travel features. Daniel could have lived in a penthouse. He could have driven an expensive sports car. He could have worn a different designer suit every day. Instead, he lived in a comfortable suburban house with Lily. He drove an ordinary SUV. He shopped at regular grocery stores. And he never forgot where he came from. Daniel had grown up poor. His father had worked nights as a security guard. His mother cleaned hotel rooms. Daniel still remembered her coming home exhausted, taking off her shoes near the door, and pretending she wasn't tired when he asked her to play. "Hotels are funny places," his mother used to tell him. Why? Because some people enter them feeling important, and others enter feeling invisible. Daniel never forgot that. Years later, when he bought the Carter Grand, he put one sentence on the wall inside his private office. "Treat every guest like they matter. Not because they're rich. Because they're human." Daniel expected his employees to follow that principle. Most did. But lately, something had changed. Complaints were increasing. Guests said front desk employees were rude. Housekeeping staff complained about management. Older customers were treated differently from wealthy younger customers. Daniel had received reports about employees being judged by their clothes. He had ordered an internal review. But his chief operating officer, Richard Blake, kept assuring him everything was under control. Every large hotel gets complaints, Richard said. Daniel wasn't convinced. But he trusted people. That was sometimes his weakness. On the afternoon of the incident, Daniel had planned something special for Lily. She had recently won a school writing competition. Her prize was a small certificate. But to Daniel, it was worth more than any business award he'd ever received. Lily's essay had been about her mother. She had written about how Emily used to make pancakes on Saturday mornings. She had written about how her mother smelled like vanilla. And she had ended the essay with a sentence that made Daniel cry when he read it. "My mom isn't here anymore, but love doesn't leave just because someone does." Daniel decided to take Lily to the Carter Grand for one night. He wanted them to have a special father-daughter evening. He had secretly arranged for a corner suite to be decorated with balloons. There would be chocolate cake. There would be a framed copy of Lily's winning essay beside the bed. And there would be a small surprise. Daniel had arranged for the hotel pianist to play Emily's favorite song during dinner. He didn't tell Lily any of this. He wanted to see her face. So Daniel didn't arrive like an owner. He arrived like a regular guest. He wore his old hoodie because Lily had spilled hot chocolate on his dress shirt that morning. He didn't mind. "Daddy," Lily said as they entered the lobby, "it's so fancy." Daniel smiled. "Fancy? Very fancy. Then don't touch anything." Lily giggled. They approached the front desk. A young receptionist named Jessica was helping an elderly couple. Daniel waited patiently. When she finished, he smiled. "Good evening. We have a reservation under Carter." Jessica typed something. Then she frowned. "First name?" "Daniel." She searched again. Her expression became uncomfortable. "I don't see anything." Daniel showed her the confirmation email on his phone. "Could you check again?" Jessica looked. Then she called the front desk manager. A tall man named Victor approached. Victor was 43 and had worked at the hotel for 6 years. He looked at Daniel. Then at Lily. Then at Daniel's hoodie. "Can I help you?" Daniel explained. Victor checked the system. "There is no reservation under this name. That doesn't make sense." "I'm sorry." Daniel showed him the confirmation. Victor barely glanced at it. "It may be fraudulent." Daniel stared at him. "Fraudulent?" "Yes." Lily's smile disappeared. "Daddy, are we in trouble?" Daniel immediately knelt beside her. "No, sweetheart." Victor folded his arms. "Sir, if you don't have a valid reservation, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Daniel stood slowly. "I don't want trouble." "Then please leave." The words were quiet. But they cut deeply. Daniel looked around the lobby. People were watching. A businessman near the bar glanced over. 2 women whispered to each other. A family waiting for the elevator stared. Daniel felt the humiliation. Not for himself. For Lily. She was holding his hand tighter. "Daddy," she whispered, "maybe we can go somewhere else." Daniel looked at her. He saw disappointment in her eyes. And suddenly he remembered his mother. He remembered what she had said about people entering hotels feeling invisible. Daniel turned back toward Victor. "Could you please call your general manager?" Victor laughed. You're making this difficult. I simply want my reservation honored. You don't have one. I do. You don't. Daniel took a breath. Fine. He reached into his pocket. He didn't pull out a credit card. He pulled out his driver's license. Then he placed it on the desk. Victor looked at it. His face didn't change. Daniel Carter, he read. Yes. Okay. Daniel looked him directly in the eyes. Do you know who owns this hotel? Victor shrugged. The Carter Group. And who is Daniel Carter? Victor looked annoyed. Probably the owner. Daniel nodded. That's me. There was silence. Jessica's eyes widened. Victor stared at him. Then he laughed. Sir, that's not funny. I'm not joking. Victor leaned forward. You expect me to believe that the owner of this hotel walks in wearing a hoodie and asks for a room? Daniel nodded. Yes. Victor shook his head. Nice story. Lily looked at her father. Daddy, why doesn't he believe you? Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he took out his phone. He called his assistant. Anna? Mr. Carter? I'm at the hotel. There was silence. Which hotel? The Carter Grand. Anna immediately sounded concerned. Are you inside? Yes. Is everything okay? No. Daniel looked at Victor. Can you send me the current staff roster? Of course. And tell Richard Blake I'm here. Mr. Carter, Richard is actually hosting a management dinner tonight. Cancel it. Yes, sir. Daniel ended the call. Victor's face had begun to change. But he still wasn't convinced. Sir, I don't know what game you're playing. Daniel looked at him calmly. I'm not playing a game. Victor crossed his arms. Then prove you're the owner. Daniel pointed toward the private elevator. Take me to the executive office. Victor hesitated. That's restricted. Daniel almost smiled. Exactly. At that moment, another employee approached. Her name was Maria. She was a housekeeper. She had worked at the hotel for 11 years. She recognized Daniel immediately. Her eyes widened. Mr. Carter? The lobby went silent. Victor turned. Maria walked toward them. Mr. Carter, is that you? Daniel nodded. Hi, Maria. Maria looked shocked. You remember me? Of course. She smiled nervously. You came to the staff Christmas dinner 3 years ago. Daniel smiled. And you told me the kitchen was wasting too much food. Maria laughed. I did. You were right. Victor's face turned pale. Jessica covered her mouth. Lily looked up. You really own this place? Daniel smiled. Yes, sweetheart. She looked around. So you're the boss? Daniel laughed softly. Something like that. Victor suddenly became nervous. Mr. Carter, I apologize. I didn't recognize you. Daniel looked at him. That isn't the problem. Victor swallowed. What is? You didn't recognize me. Daniel glanced at Lily. The problem is that you didn't recognize a father who needed help. Victor couldn't respond. Daniel picked up his phone again. Anna. Yes? Please send the full guest complaint report from the last 12 months. Immediately. And the employee disciplinary records. Yes. And I want the security footage from tonight preserved. Victor's face went completely white. Mr. Carter, please. Daniel held up a hand. Not now. Lily tugged on his sleeve. Daddy. Daniel looked down. What? Can we still have cake? Daniel smiled. Of course. That was when the hotel general manager, Richard Blake, rushed into the lobby. Richard was 52. He wore an expensive suit and had the confident expression of a man who had always believed he could talk his way out of anything. Daniel. Daniel looked at him. Richard smiled. I'm so sorry. There must have been some misunderstanding. Daniel didn't smile. Where is my reservation? Richard hesitated. I'll take care of it. No. Daniel. Where is it? Richard glanced at Victor. Victor said nothing. Richard cleared his throat. There was an issue with the booking system. Daniel looked at Anna's message on his phone. His reservation had been confirmed 3 weeks earlier. The suite had been reserved under his personal account. Someone had manually cancelled it that afternoon. Daniel looked at Richard. Who cancelled my reservation? Richard hesitated. I'll investigate. No. Daniel's voice remained calm. Tell me now. Richard looked nervous. I don't know. Daniel nodded. Then find out. Richard tried to smile. Of course. Daniel turned to Lily. Come on. He took her hand. They walked toward the elevators. But Daniel didn't go to the suite. He went to the executive office. Inside, he opened the staff complaint database. What he found made his stomach turn. There were dozens of complaints. A disabled veteran had been told to wait outside because he was dressed casually. A mother with 2 children had been charged extra after questioning a minibar fee. An elderly couple had complained that a receptionist ignored them for 20 minutes while helping a wealthy guest. A black businessman had reported being followed by security. A young employee had complained about verbal abuse from a manager. A housekeeper had reported unsafe working conditions. And every complaint had one thing in common. Most had been marked resolved. But nothing had actually been resolved. Daniel sat in silence. Lily sat beside him. Daddy? Yes? Are you sad? Daniel looked at her. A little. Why? Because this place is supposed to make people feel welcome. Lily thought for a moment. Maybe they forgot. Daniel smiled sadly. Maybe. Then he looked at the reports again. No. His expression changed. They didn't forget. They chose. The next morning, Daniel called an emergency meeting. Every department head had to attend. The conference room was packed. Richard sat at the front. Victor was there. The HR director was there. Security supervisors were there. Department managers were there. Daniel walked in wearing a dark suit. Everyone stood. Sit. They sat. Daniel placed a folder on the table. This hotel made over $40 million last year. People looked proud. Daniel opened the folder. And during the same year, we made hundreds of people feel worthless. Silence. Richard spoke. Daniel, I think we should discuss this privately. Daniel looked at him. No. Richard's smile disappeared. You're upset about last night. I am. But one incident shouldn't erase years of good work. Daniel shook his head.